that might be a possibility, because anything is a possibility with DC right now, because it seems like, in the words of the Joker, DC is going to be going through an aggressive expansion. Because I think DC got real nervous looking at that Disney investor call and went, oh crap, here, everything. Actually, it's not as dramatic as people are making it out to be. So what we're talking about is Walter Hamada, who's in charge of Warner Brothers, basically came out and said that they're hoping to have 4 DC movies in 2022 and 4 years, 4 theatrical release movies every year from then on out, and really explode the market with DC projects, both theatrically and HBO Max. Now, some people will be like, well, I thought all the stuff was going to HBO Max and they don't care about the theatrical experience. That's an AT&T decision, not a Warner Brothers decision. I don't think Warner Brothers knew that they were being told to go to HBO Max. And some people are going, 4 DC movies in 2022? Are you nuts? That's way too many. To which I'm just going, guys, you do know there's already 3 on the calendar for 2022 already. And depending on when that animated Super Pets movie's coming out, we already know what our 4 movies are. So it's not a huge change to the schedule. And they've also said they have 2 movies that they would like that same year to go straight to HBO Max. And it sounds a lot like it's going to be the Static Shock movie and the long gestating Batgirl movie, which I still don't actually believe is ever happening and never has been happening. I think it's just a cover for when they brought Joss Whedon in for the Zack Snyder reshoots. So they're just like, oh, no, we're bringing in Joss for who's the female character we have? Oh, Batgirl? He's working on a Batgirl movie. And then once he was done with the Snyder Cut reshoots, they were just like, sorry, I couldn't figure out Batgirl, even though we never were working on a Batgirl. That's just how I see it. Maybe they are actually working on a Batgirl movie. But Michael, you hear that they're doing a bunch of DC projects. Do you think this is Warner Brothers jumping the gun, and doing what they did before Batman v Superman came out and just announcing a whole bunch of stuff? Or do you think this is a smart play in the world of streaming?
I am conflicted on this, very much so, because when I first heard this, my reaction immediately was, I don't care. And when I look at that, and my reaction, if I'm being objective, I would say I don't care because I'm not a big fan of the DCEU films. I personally haven't liked hardly any of them. And
if you had to, what are the ones that you do like? What are the ones that you do like? If you had to
say? So I'll get to that in a second, because actually, okay. I basically say, like, so that's my reaction, and then I'm going to go and basically disprove my own reaction, or basically kind of settle myself down a little bit. Okay, so this seems highly reactionary to Disney. It's just that Disney happened to have the press conference first, and the fact that Disney has the press conference first, they have the public's trust. Anything that comes after is going to be a loss, because even if any company announces something great, it's going to be to the average consumer like, oh, they're just doing that because Marvel's doing that, which that might be true to a certain extent, but Hamada doesn't get to a place of this type of authority and decision making if he's just being reactionary to other people. And if you don't think that other people are reactionary and let other people go first, I mean, Disney has tested the waters, and just like Apple, they have allowed other people to pave the way, make mistakes, and then they can come in and perfect it. So this happens in the industry all the time. So when I hear that a lot of these films are going to be coming, well, we knew that there was going to be some. I mean, at the moment, we already know that the Suicide Squad's coming, The Flash, Aquaman 2, Shazam, and Black Adam. And there's these other films that are excluded from that list that are also coming. Mm-hmm. So we do know that there is already announced films. It's not like that's going to surprise us. But when it is surprising, it does seem like they're just going from 0 to 100 without any transition. Mm-hmm. That gives me a little bit of a pause. But when I look and I have to critique myself, I say, what films are good? Well, there have been 9 DCEU films with the current release now of Wonder Woman 1984. And let me just run through them real quick just for the viewers, and let me compare them to the first 9 releases of the MCU films. So, going back to 2013 and going all the way to present, we have Man of Steel, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, Justice League, Aquaman, Shazam, Birds of Prey, and we know Wonder Woman 1984. Now, you compare that to the first 9 films of the MCU, you have Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America: The First Avenger, Marvel's The Avengers, Iron Man 3, and Thor: The Dark World. And then, and then finally Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Those are the first 9 films. Now, I am not going to say that any of the Marvel films were absolutely just flat out bad, because I think the curve for the DCEU
Thor:
is worse.
The Dark World.
However,
Thor: The Dark World. Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah.
Thor: The Dark. Incredible Hulk. Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
Iron Man 2, man.
There are films that split the people. Like the films of the 9, okay, that I would say people universally love them. I would say, like, well, Captain America: Winter Soldier, Avengers,
Iron Man.
Those are definitive.
Yeah.
Now, if you go and you look at DCEU, people generally like Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, Aquaman,
I wouldn't say Man of
Shazam.
Steel. I wouldn't say Man of Steel. I love Man of Steel, but I wouldn't say. I would say Shazam.
Well, 3.5.
I would say Shazam, Wonder Woman, and maybe Aquaman. Critics didn't, but screw the critics. Aquaman's the best DCEU movie. Fight me.
Right. Well, I mean, it made over $1 billion. Like,
yeah.
It had legs. Like, so, like, yeah, and I am referring to the fans. And so when we look back on these, they pound for pound, like, does the worst of Marvel compare to the worst of DC? I think the worst that Marvel has to offer is better, but it's not like Marvel absolutely was killing it out of the gate. It's really in phase 2 that they found that rhythm, they found that theme that they were looking for, which we know the DCEU has been just all over the place with trying to figure out what the audience wants. And I know the DC fans were like, we want a more kind of grounded, a little more cynical film. It's not as much
maybe
fanciful.
Some of them do.
It kind of lays off. Well,
I want my hope and
like
optimism,
that
dang it.
Seems like, I mean, I do. Right. But, I mean, even, like, I don't want to really see, like, Superman have the same theme of, like, Guardians, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's they know their place. They figured it out. And in DC, I just don't know if we've been as forgiving because they've come later. I mean, Iron Man came out in 2008. So they had 5 years before DC. I mean, they were in this market 5 years before DC released, Man of Steel. I mean, they were on Iron Man 3 the same year that Man of Steel came out.
I think the big difference
they were already in the marketplace. They were getting feedback. They were trying to tell this much grander narrative that they had already in place, and they were able to adjust. DC has been all over the place.
I think the reason for that is one, people always assume that DC is trying to catch up, and to a certain extent DC is. But Marvel has painstakingly made everything interconnected. DC is making it abundantly clear, and I think it's their big game plan going forward, and I think it might actually be their saving grace going forward, that we don't care about interconnected stuff. We care about properties. Like, they're going to have a whole bunch of these movies, but notice the ones that are the best received ones are the ones that don't necessarily tie into other movies or set up other things. Wonder Woman does not set up a future movie at all. Aquaman doesn't set up a future movie at all. Shazam hints to a sequel, but it's very much a self-contained movie. I love Man of Steel. It's my favorite Zack Snyder movie, except for maybe Watchmen. But that is not, despite what Zack Snyder may tell you, Man of Steel was not meant to set up anything. It is a standalone movie, and I think people expect DC to follow the Marvel trend of everything has to be connected. Everything has to be leading to an Avengers level threat for DC. And I don't think that's their game plan now. I think they're counting on Flash to introduce the multiverse and be like, this can happen on this world, this can happen on this world, this can happen on this world, and just make as many movies as they want under the DC banner, but don't necessarily have to make them connected, which I don't think is a bad thing. Just make good movies and people will show up. Guys,
Yes.
things don't have to be a connected universe for it to work. You know how I know? Because that's how comic book movies were made before 2008. It's possible. We want stuff to be in a connected universe. Sure, it's cool, but it doesn't have to be. Just make good movies. And I think, maybe it's just me being an optimist here, but the more movies you crank out here for theatrical and HBO Max, the higher the odds that some of them might actually be good. Now, I'm saying this as someone who's been desperately asking for a Man of Steel 2 and a Nightwing movie. And I fully acknowledge that me taking this stance is just me going, okay, if they're making a whole bunch more movies, then that means they might actually have a time to shine. We might finally get this Nightwing movie. We might finally get this Superman movie. And it's completely selfish of me, but I don't care, because one of my biggest frustrations right now as a DC fan is Marvel has this huge library of people that they've put in movies. From Howard the Duck was in Endgame, for crying out loud, to now we're getting Kate Bishop, Miss Marvel, a whole bunch of, no offense to them, but lower tier characters. Whereas DC, still no Teen Titans, no Nightwing, no standalone Flash movie, the Green Lantern Corps in modern day, Martian Manhunter, Red Tornado, the Hawks. Like, there's so many cool characters in the world of DC, but we keep sticking to the same ones. And so maybe, at least for me, I like the idea of they're announcing a whole bunch of new stuff, because maybe for once we can just gravitate towards new creative ideas, because DC is all about that when they want to be. That's just me being optimistic, because gosh dang it, Man of Steel 2, get here already.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. My goodness, what I'd give to see a Teen Titans film. I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that that animated series. That was so good.
Okay,
Um,
I've told
yeah,
Heather this before. I almost cried tears of joy when Cap lifted Mjolnir and they did the Avengers Assemble. If you did this right, there's a famous arc called the Judas Contract. It's where Robin finally becomes Nightwing. If you have Robin in a movie, in a Teen Titans movie, become Nightwing, and they have an Avengers type moment where camera zooms in on Robin, Titans, go! I would die happy tears in my eyes. I could retire a happy man from everything movie related, and I feel like it's not far away. I feel like the best days of DC are not far away. It's just frustrating to wait at times, because I feel like we are so close to a Superman movie. I just feel it, but I get tired of waiting, if that makes sense, for something that I don't know if it's coming, but I just feel like big things are on the horizon, but that could just be me.
No, the best days I think at DC are certainly and hopefully in front of them. I'm just still personally struggling to care because they have not captivated my attention yet, and they're going to have to earn it. So I'm going to remain skeptical, but also hopeful.